Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the San Francisco Interfaith Council's weekly online briefing for faith leaders. This discussion will focus on the impact of COVID-19 on older adults seeking to re-enter the workforce. Hosted by the San Francisco Interfaith Council and supported by the Joint Information Center of the San Francisco Command Center. Some housekeeping. Audio, video, and chat will be monitored and recorded for record keeping, training, and quality assurance. By default, all participants will be muted and video turned off to minimize distractions. For the chat, to submit a question or comment, select the chat button at the bottom of your screen and send a message to Q&A. They will be shared with the speakers after the meeting for response. Thank you. Due to widespread COVID-19 infection rates, the state has now moved San Francisco into the most restrictive tier, purple. In accordance with the state order, there are many restrictions on indoor activities, including the temporary closure of indoor worship services, gyms, movie theaters, museums, and indoor retail capacity is now limited to 25%. Additionally, San Franciscans must follow the state's limited stay-at-home order, which includes that you can go outside on your own or with people that you live with. You can go to an essential job. Avoid being around people from outside your household between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. You can still get food takeout after 10 p.m. and go to grocery stores and pharmacies. Our actions now will shape how San Francisco emerges from this pandemic. Together, we are resilient. Learn more at sf.gov/limited-stay-home. Get tested, San Francisco. You can save lives and stop the spread of COVID-19 by getting tested through your healthcare provider. If you have symptoms or have been exposed to COVID-19 but don't have health insurance or can't get tested through your provider, visit sf.gov/gettestedsf or call 311 for information on getting tested at a city-run testing location. At this time, I'd like to hand the floor over to the Executive Director of the Interfaith Council, Michael Pappas. Michael, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alyssa, and thank you to our team at the COVID Command Center's Joint Information Center Virtual Outreach Team. This is our 32nd program together, and without you all, we wouldn't have the capacity to be sharing such integral information with our constituencies. Good morning, I'm Michael Pappas, and on behalf of the San Francisco Interfaith Council, I want to welcome you to this morning's online briefing for faith leaders. In the twilight of their years, older adults possess life experiences and a sincere desire to utilize their honed skills to live a valued life and constructively contribute to the betterment of society. They fill a unique niche in a competitive workforce and for many employers are attractive candidates able to accomplish needed tasks without having to work full-time. Paradoxically, science tells us that older adults are among the most vulnerable sectors to contract the coronavirus. This week's online briefing for faith leaders, hosted by the San Francisco Interfaith Council and supported by the COVID Command Center's Joint Information Center Virtual Outreach Team, will address this timely issue and the COVID-19's impact by hearing from SF Reserve, an organization whose mission is to support and assist older adults seeking to re-enter the workforce. At this time, it's my distinct pleasure and privilege to welcome and introduce the chairman of the board of the San Francisco Interfaith Council, my friend Kaushik Roy.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kaushik, and on behalf of the board of directors, I want to extend a warm welcome to everyone. I just want to very quickly share my appreciation for all of our guests this morning. We all know the direction in which not just the city, but the country is headed as far as the pandemic goes and have been for some time. So I think this is a very relevant and will be a very engaging and important conversation. So we appreciate all the participants. And I also, as I hope to do every time I have a chance to say something, want to express my appreciation for our two staff members, Michael Pappas and Cynthia Zamboukas, are a dynamic duo for sure, and they accomplish so much. I'm sure they are accomplishing more than many teams that are much larger in size. So thank you, Michael and Cynthia, as always. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, I'd like to extend a special welcome to you. Whenever the Interfaith Council has a gathering or meeting, such as this one, we do have an interfaith statement we like to read just as a way to remind us and ground us into why we are all gathering together. So I'll just read that very quickly and we will commence the program from there. This is an interfaith community. Whatever our individual belief, it can be freely expressed here with no apologies. If we are invited to offer a prayer in this setting, it should be offered according to the tradition with which we identify. If we are invited to speak on a subject from the perspective of our tradition, we are free to do so without fear of offending those who come from another tradition. We come together as people of faith to learn from each other that we might better understand the multiplicity of faith traditions in our city and in our world. Good morning, everybody.
Thank you, Kaushik, and thank you for your leadership and continued commitment to this series. You add so much and we are grateful. At this time, I'd like to welcome San Francisco Interfaith Council's newest board member and the pastor of the very dynamic City Church of San Francisco to lead us in a reflective moment, Reverend Fred Harrell.
Thank you, Michael. It's a real privilege to be here this morning. You know, there's this old ancient story in the Hebrew scriptures from 2 Samuel 21 that highlights one of my favorite characters in the scriptures, and her name is Rizpah. So a famine has struck the land, the rains have stopped, the land is dry for 3 years running. The king, David, inherits all the problems of the previous king, Saul's regime, and the logic was that Saul had committed blood guilt of some time and it was causing this famine. So David goes to the offended party and asks them, how can we make things right? I'll do anything you ask to make restitution. Great, they say. We don't want money. We don't want treasures or weapons or anything material. What we want is to execute 7 of Saul's the previous king, 7 of Saul's descendants. How convenient that ending the famine means ending the lives of potential threats to David's throne. Being drunk with power numbs you to human loss, it appears. So David obliges and hands over 7 boys, all descendants of former King Saul. The children are impaled and hung on the hill of God. They are innocent. They've done nothing wrong. They simply belong to the wrong family. But they are snatched from their homes and they're gone for the good of the nation. Enter Rizpah, the mother of these 2 children, of 2 of the children on those crosses. Rizpah, the daughter of Ai, it says in 2 Samuel, took sackcloth, spread it on a rock for herself from the beginning of harvest until rain fell on them from the heavens. She did not allow the birds of the air to come on the bodies by day or the wild animals by night. Will Gaffney, author of Womanist Midrash, says that Rizpah fights with winged, clawed, and toothed scavengers night and day. She is there from the spring harvest until the fall rains, as many as 6 months, sleeping and eating, toileting, protecting, and bearing witness. You might hear Rizpah saying, only 2 children on those crosses are mine, but I don't care. Every child on the cross is my child. As long as there is one single child on the cross of pain and indignity, I will stand up and I will fight for that child. A crucified child is my child. Now, let's apply this just a little bit to the work that we're seeking to do here. The first thing is that Rizpah is angry. I mean, really angry. And anger is not wrong. Her anger, in the words of Austin Channing Brown, points to what is wrong and what could be made right. And so anger is not always destructive. It is instructive if we will listen. If we will listen to the anger of our siblings in communities of color instead of judge them. If we will listen to our siblings trying to get their families into a safe country. If we will listen to our trans friends who daily hope to survive. If we will listen. And so the anger of nonviolent protesters is never wrong. Uncomfortable? Yes. Instructive? Absolutely. The second thing is Rizpah sees humanity on those crosses. Every day for 6 months, she saw those rotting bodies and remembered their humanity. How they used to play at her feet, how they used to laugh, how many times she comforted them when they were troubled or hurt, the first time they walked. Just like Trayvon's mom remembers his smile, and Mike Brown's mom remembers his laugh, and Breonna Taylor's mom remembers her hopes and dreams, just like Emmett Till's mother insisted the casket be open, insisting his humanity and injustice perpetrated against it be seen. And then lastly, Rizpah wasn't appreciated at all. Imagine her up there on that hill for 6 months. What were people saying about her? You know, she has every right to be mad, but I don't like her tone. That protester up there scares me. Is she hysterical? She's being divisive. She's a heretic. She's the real racist, an enemy of the people. Hey, Rizpah, all lives matter. This is to be expected. Now, this is instructive for our work in this city, to allow our anger at injustice to inform us, to insist on the humanity of every resident of our city, to understand that pointing these things out will not always be appreciated, but nevertheless, we persist. Quick postscript to this, David ended up repenting, had those boys taken down, and they were given a proper burial. So may we be a community of Rizpahs who, like Jesus, spoke truth to power, would not settle for the status quo, publicly risked her life on behalf of not only her children, but all children everywhere, and knew her power was in telling the truth by faith. Amen. Let's pray. Oh, great love, thank you for living and loving in us and through us. May all that we do flow from our deep connection with you and all beings. Help us become a community and city that, like Rizpah, is never satisfied with the status quo, but insists on justice. Listen to our heart's longings for the healing of our world, knowing you are hearing us better than we are speaking. We offer these prayers in all the holy names of God. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Fred, for this message at such a critical time and reminding us of our responsibility to be part of the solution when it comes to social justice. Thank you. We are very privileged today to have with us 3 leaders in the Community Living Campaign's SF Reserve program. I first came into contact with the Community Living Campaign through my relationship with its director, Marie Jobling, when I sat on the Commission for Aging and Adult Services, and even before that. This program in particular is a critical program because it supports and assists older adults who are seeking to reenter the workplace. We welcome the director of the program, Jamie Goddard, a reservist, John Edmondson, and a partner development associate, Larry Nelson. And at this time, I would hand the floor over to them for their featured presentation.
Thank you so much, Michael. I'm going to share my screen for our presentation. Is everyone able to see that?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Well, first, I want to say thank you on behalf of John, Larry, and myself for having us here. We talked about this a long time ago, Michael, I think, and a few things got in the way, but here we are. And I also want to thank Cynthia and thank Sharon again, Cynthia Zambucas and Sharon Walton, for helping get things prepared and ferrying us through to this point. As Michael said, I'm the director of the program, and my teammates are John Edmiston. John works with the applicants, those people who are job seekers and who eventually become reservists once they're placed in work, and Larry Nelson, who is out there working with nonprofits and small businesses that anchor communities to find part-time work, meaningful part-time work for our older adults and adults with disabilities. And they're both going to talk a little bit deeper about the reservists as well as the partnership development efforts. And I will say that this is an incredible opportunity for us, because getting a group of leaders together who have impact in the community with your respective houses of worship really allows us through you, and this is our ask, to spread the word as to how we can support older adults and potentially support you in finding talent to help fill in some of the needs that you might have at your organizations. We pride ourselves on the diversity that comes through our door, and we'll talk a little bit more about that with the panelists. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about community living campaign. Oh, I'm going the opposite direction, aren't I? Well, there's my slideshow. Pardon me for that. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about community living campaign, which Michael mentioned. Our executive director is Ms. Marie Jobling. Our values, which you'll see align very much with what the Interfaith Council is about. John's going to talk about reserve and recruiting, how we go about recruiting job seekers. Larry will talk about what it means to be a partner and who we are seeking to be partners with. And how are we adapting to the changing environment? We'll cover that, as well as how we're growing the program. Community Living Campaign was founded 13 years ago by a small group of activists, Marie being at one of those, and I believe Jessica Lehman, who is the executive director of Senior and Disability Action, was quite involved. Peter Estes is here, one of our panelists from SDA. And we advocate for individual choice and the ability for older adults and people with disabilities to have access to the basic human rights, many of which Pastor Fred mentioned and Michael has mentioned. And so we provide programs that help connect people, connect neighbors, connect our community connectors with neighborhoods, and we connect people with experts and employers, much as you all probably do as well. You see someone in need, you have a connection, you know that you can make a phone call on their behalf, make an introduction, do a little bit of research, and ease their load a little bit and create a bigger community around each individual. And that's really what we're about. And of course, the Reserve program focuses on employment, but we have this wonderful organization that we can draw from when we see individuals in the community of San Francisco who need other support and services. So as I mentioned, helping neighbors connect with neighbors and help neighbors. And we have structured community connector networks and neighborhoods. We've got 9 throughout the city. We've pivoted to be able to have a lot of activities via Zoom that might have been held at churches or parks and rec, anything from exercise to writing classes, to watching a Beatles film and hearing about, for the baby boomers, and hearing about what it was like to work for the Beatles and produce films with them and produce music. And we've been able to pivot very quickly to Zoom, but we also continue to go out to the neighborhoods and deliver things like little teacups with succulents and cards that children at one of our partners, Friends of St. Francis, have made for the holidays, and we're thinking of you. So there is still, as much as possible, a safe distance interaction with our community. We have also got a very strong computer skills program that was throughout the city, and we have a lab at our location. That too has been able to pivot to online. As you know, it's very challenging though to teach tech on tech. So we're exploring ways to do that. And then of course, advocacy, which is really what the organization was founded on. Advocacy through the disability community, for the disability community to have safer sidewalks, advocacy to get funding for older adults and adults with disabilities, for employment and other services. And where we come in the economic security through finding meaningful part-time employment for older adults and adults with disabilities. So I'm not going to read through all of the values here, but as you scan, you can probably see that they are very connected to your organizations and your communities of worship. We really look at an individual and think, where can we stretch as far as possible to have, again, that wraparound high touch. We do not provide direct services in the way that some other organizations do, but again, we partner with those. So for instance, for people who need to understand their benefits, we might refer them to the Positive Resource Center or the Independent Living Resource Center, so that they can ask the questions to understand how they might assure their financial security. You all know that isolation and loneliness is an enormous problem in general with this pandemic, and particularly for aging adults. And I think it was you, Michael, who mentioned the transgender community. That is an increasingly aging community, the LGBT community in general in San Francisco. And the trans community is one that is in particular highly marginalized. So to that end, we are actually working with, in collaboration with other organizations and talking about how we can stretch our dollars and our models and what we're funded to do to reach those highly marginalized communities, trans communities of color, additional pockets throughout the city. So we looked at our values, and this building communities that build fairness, equity, and justice, which we've always done, but with the murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and of the many Black individuals throughout the country and people of color whose names we don't know, who have been murdered or have had violence perpetrated against them, with the Black Lives Matter movement really bubbling up again, we took a step back and, like many organizations, said, well, who are we and what are we really doing about this? And do we need to strengthen our commitment to diversity of older adults and adults with disabilities? And where are those opportunities for us to move forward and really honor those cultural histories and go deeper into our own personal experiences? And so we decided that we would first focus on Black Lives Matter. And then, of course, as these things go, there was a rush for action. And then we took a big step back and said, let's widen the lens while we're still going to be focused on Black Lives Matter as our first population to really take action around. We wanted to make sure that we assembled diversity of individuals in our own organization to look at what we're doing internally before we go outside into the world. Because, you know, take care of home first, in a sense, make sure that we're strong, that we're being honest, that we're being authentic, that we're having challenging and sometimes frightening conversations with each other. So we assembled a group of people yesterday, our first meeting. We engaged a group of experts to assess and explore how we are operating as a culture and to strengthen that commitment to diversity, equitability, and inclusiveness. And then we will go out more pointedly into the world with regard to Black Lives Matter. We do have on our website a statement from the board if you're interested in that. We have all that information for you in this slide deck. So at this point, I am going to hand over to John Edmiston, our manager of applicants and reservists, to give you more detail about the program itself.
Thank you, Jamie. I had to unmute. So we are funded in part by or wholly by the Department of Disability and Aging Services. Fully a quarter of the population of San Francisco is at risk of not meeting their necessities in life: food, health insurance, even housing. And DOS is a bridge to providing the services that are needed. Reserve is one of those programs that is a bridge to economic security for this population. Next slide. So Reserve is actually, SF Reserve is actually an affiliate of Reserve National, which is based on the East Coast. As you might imagine, being in San Francisco, we do things a little differently from the national organization. I've had so many conversations with applicants and reservists that have had long careers and have a great deal of experience and find themselves out of work for a number of reasons. And it's very difficult not to crack to get folks to a place where they can actually continue to contribute to their communities and their lives. So that's really why we're here doing that. Next slide. So reservists are from every walk of life in San Francisco. As you can see, teachers, social workers, nurses, writers, some of them have been CEOs. Some of them are, many are bilingual. There's over 112 languages spoken in San Francisco. I myself don't speak 112 languages, but we have a number of folks on staff who do speak and can work with our clients who speak Spanish, Cantonese, and many others. Go ahead, next slide, that's fine. So we really meet reservists and applicants where they are. It's very tailored to the individual. Our jobs are part-time, 10 to 15 hours a week is the norm. And it's flexible. Usually the partners and the applicants work out together the hours and the schedule that they will work together. It's very rare that we have a job that you must be here on like Tuesday at 8 o'clock and Thursday at 9 o'clock. This is all very flexible and worked out between them. We provide a $16.50 hourly stipend. There's also administration fee. Go ahead, next slide. Population of San Francisco really mirrors the population that I'm sure all of you are familiar with. We're the fastest growing age group in San Francisco. Fully 20% of the population of San Francisco is 60 or older, and at least 10% of the population identifies as living with a disability. And they all still want to work and contribute to their communities. San Francisco is a very expensive city, as you all know. And now in 2020, we've had to really adapt even more to the fact that we're living in a post-COVID world, or we're not post-COVID yet, but we're living in the middle of a pandemic, and that has greatly affected how we do our jobs and what jobs are even available. Next slide. So we talked a little bit about the digital divide earlier. It's was a real eye-opener for me. Many adults, many seniors who have email and all that used to access it at either the public library or a computer hub or someplace where they could go in public and log on and get hooked up to the internet. Those things are all gone now. And many individuals don't have their own laptops, or they're not quite comfortable with the technology. Fully 40% of older adults don't have basic digital literacy skills. And as you see, more than half do not use the internet at all. So that's been a real challenge for us, because if someone needs to look for a job and apply for work, these days it's almost completely done through computers, through Zoom interviews, through applications they fill out online. And it's another barrier to seniors and adults with disabilities to be able to get into the job force. So that's been a real issue that we've worked very hard at and are continuing to address. Next slide. So we have been able, through a number of programs, a number of organizations, to provide computers and internet connectivity and training to our reservists and applicants. I myself have personally delivered a number of laptops to reservists and applicants so they can continue to apply for work and stay connected. There's a whole sort of panoply of organizations that have either been doing this for a while or newly working on providing technology to our adults. We learned that just giving someone a laptop doesn't solve the problem, because if they're not comfortable with the technology, if they don't understand how to get connected or how to do a Google search or how to go to YouTube to learn a tutorial, then having a laptop is in and of itself not enough. We've also had folks that don't have internet in the buildings where they live. and we provide mobile hotspots for them to get connected. So we have a pretty broad range of things. And we also want to emphasize the fact that we can also have fun together through Zoom, through Zoom meetings that teach cooking classes or writing classes or even sing-alongs. So we're really ramping up the increase in technology and the comfort level of our seniors. Next slide. So we're members of a coalition called Work Matters. So it's SF Reserve, the Felton Institute and their CSEP program, Jobs Now, and the Positive Resource Center. Through this coalition, we offer a kind of continuum of job placement for various folks who some may need some training. We refer back and forth to each other. SF Reserve is not a training program. The folks that come to us basically should be job ready so that we can put them right out into the workforce. But some folks who haven't been in the workforce for a while may need a little training. They may need some different services. And through the Work Matters Coalition, we're able to get people to the right services and the right model for them. And I think that may be my last slide. Is that right? Next slide.
Yes, so we're going to pass it over to Larry Nelson, who's our Partnership Development and Associate, to talk to you from the partner perspective.
I was just saying a little prayer so I would do well on this presentation.
Larry's relatively new, and so we've just thrown him out here.
Yes, here I am.
But it's a safe space.
Thank you so much for having me, for having us. And thank you, John. I want to ensure that we are careful in matching our reservists with partners, because we really have to have a good fit, because it benefits the partner and it benefits the reservist. Our third-party payroll vendor makes life much easier for the partners and reservists. So, you know, all that stuff you have to deal with payroll and hours and stuff, that's all handled by a third-party vendor. Next slide. This is pretty basic stuff. This list of ours is constantly evolving. I'll just give you all a chance to look at it. You don't have to memorize it. There will not be a test. Next slide. Due to COVID, we've had to furlough reservists. And what we've been able to do within our organization and under the umbrella of the Community Living Campaign is to create some jobs for our furloughed reservists, like a courier position and different things. So we feel it's our responsibility to take care of our reservists and at the same time take care of our partners and consistently and constantly keep in touch with them as to their evolving needs, especially during this pandemic. Here's the good thing. Over 90% of our partners, maybe more, tell us they would hire a reservist again. So I think that's a pretty good record. Next slide, please. These are just some of our partners. We'd be honored to have anybody who's listening or viewing this presentation contact us, contact me. We'll give you that information shortly. And we'd love to add your name onto this list and share it in the future. Next slide, please. You may want to print this and keep it handy. We will be sending out our deck, and you can print certain things, of course, from it, but this is a good thing to keep on your desk. So you can answer a question immediately that a job seeker, or on the left there, that a partner may ask of you. For our partners, we have a very easy to complete job template. Most partners, all businesses have a job description. So we can take that, turn it into our template, and that template is then turned into our online posting. So we try to keep it simple. So sometimes it's better, really, that our job template is completed. Next slide. I was trying to think about what to say about this particular slide, and this is Sherry. She's just a wonderful, wonderful part of our team. And I came up with our reservists and partners are our our own ambassadors. Reservists are the ambassadors to the partners, and partners are ambassadors to the community. And together, we both raise awareness. Next slide. And here's the last slide, and here's something else that you can print. This is how to contact us. Keep this on your desk or handy. And we all look forward to speaking with you. Thank you so much. Back to you, Jamie.
Yes, thank you again for this opportunity. And Michael, I know that you're going to take the lead on the next portion of the program.
And as I do, Jamie, I'd just like to reiterate something you said earlier. You know, one of the things we appreciate more and more is that congregations and communities of faith are really hubs for older adults. It's where they feel safe. It's where they feel valued. It's where they can escape social isolation. And I would dare say that many congregations couldn't function without just really the volunteerism of seniors and older adults. And one of the intentions of hosting SF Reserve today was to be able to take some of their skills and put them to work in other places. And so I'm really going to ask that you give special attention to this particular program because I know that especially the faith leaders listening on today probably would have candidates who would like to re-enter the workforce but don't know how. And SF Reserve can do that. So this last contact slide is very important. And Larry, thank you for mentioning that. I'd also like to now begin. We're going to get into the field. I mean, you know, you've been given sort of the macro look at the SF Reserve program. I like to think that those who are boots on the ground, if you will, can give unique testimonies that will make real, if you will, the concepts that SF Reserve espouses. Our first guest is Peter Estes. He's a consumer rights organizer with Senior and Disability Action. And I have to say, when I saw Senior and Disabilities Action, and then I was listening to Pastor Fred talk about RISBA, I would sit at the commission meetings for Aging and Adult Services, and I would listen to the executive director speak during public comment, Jessica Lehman. She is San Francisco's RISBA, and she continued prophetically to remind us of very important aspects that we needed to be reminded of in order to make policy. So Peter, I'm going to ask that you give a special thank you and appreciation to Jessica for me. She's a colleague and a friend. I have a great deal of respect for Senior Disability in Action. And for the next 5 minutes, the floor is yours.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Michael, and thank you so much to all of our hosts. My internet connection appears to be a little bit unstable, so apologies if I cut out at all, but I'll just keep running for now, and then if anything goes wrong, we'll figure it out then. Yeah, I'll have to tell Jessica she's the RISBA of San Francisco. I think she'll like that. I was really appreciating your words earlier, Reverend Fred, so thank you for opening the space that way. So just a little bit of background on SDA Senior and Disability Action before a little context. We're a grassroots community organizing nonprofit that works towards justice, especially on housing, healthcare, and transit here in San Francisco, organizing specifically with seniors and people with disabilities to build an interracial, intergenerational, interdisability, cross-disability movement. And from campaigns to win free muni for seniors and people with disabilities, to $150 million for senior housing in last year's Prop A, to helping pass Prop I this year, to our work today, which looks a lot like ensuring that hospitals and healthcare systems are not denying care to anyone.
I think we've lost Peter.
Folks to stable and secure housing out of the shelter-in-place hotels. Did I cut out a little bit?
You're okay.
Okay. 4 people on one internet here. But I'm here today because we're lucky enough to have 2 amazing, phenomenal reservists, Bruce and Pat. And as Jamie sort of alluded to earlier, SDA and CLC are kindred spirits, and Reserve is really, I think, one of the programs that allows us to live out our values together in a powerful way. So, you know, just another opportunity for me to say thank you. So in particular, though, much of our work at SDA focuses on the level of collective action and organizing for social change. We also do an incredible amount of work at the level of individual support and education. In particular, that happens through our Peer Advocates program, which is where Reserve has really been critical in allowing us to expand our team with just really strong new members who are ready to hit the ground running from when they started, and who have additional support outside of our space. Though they're working part-time, they have another community that they're a part of that supports the challenges, that encourages them. I think that's really important. Our peer advocates at SDA, they're all seniors and people with disabilities who want to support their peers to navigate the complex bureaucracies and systems and services that exist, and ensure that people can live fully dignified lives that allow them to live independently to the fullest extent, and also to recognize all the different ways that we can tap into interdependence and live with one another. And Bruce and Pat have joined the team and been incredible stars, and just really the rocks of the team, because as reservists, they're able to commit a larger chunk of time than many of our other team members, because they're paid for this work, and many of our other team members are volunteers. So it's been really critical that we've been able to have Reserve. I think something that we alluded to earlier in the program is the pivot that we've all had to do, the figuring out that we've all had to do as the pandemic has taken its toll. And I'd say that Reserve, both in terms of Bruce and Pat themselves, but Reserve as a program, has been really critical in allowing the Peer Advocates program to effectively pivot. I mean, it's been an incredibly challenging thing to figure out how to do the work of taking calls, taking what would normally be an in-person visit to our office from someone who's seeking support to navigate complex questions and bureaucracies. You know, why is the elevator broken in my building and no one will repair it? You know, to I've gotten this confusing letter in the mail from Social Security. What we would normally do in person or over the phone at the office, we've had to figure out how to do entirely remotely. And Bruce and Pat, thanks to Reserve support, have navigated that capably and aptly, despite a myriad of tech challenges, particularly for Pat. Pat, I feel so bad for her. She seems to attract all the different challenges of tech. But seriously, thanks to Reserve, she's navigated them all and through everything, never missed a shift, always been able to make sure that she's checking our voicemail and responding to the folks who have called, who've asked us for support, who are looking for help navigating these really turbulent times. And I'd say that's a big thanks to Reserve for that. Yeah, I don't know. I feel really lucky to be here today, just to have the opportunity to talk about Reserve, to make sure more people know about Reserve. I feel like it's a program that really aligns with SDA's values. And I guess, Michael, do I get the opportunity to ask a question now, or is that later?
This is your time.
Okay, great, great. Well, so I am curious for Jamie, for John, and for Larry. Welcome, Lawrence, Larry. I think it was Larry on the program, but yes, okay. To hear, I think, where you see Reserve going. I see Reserve as this program with this enormous potential to grow in the city, and how do you see that happening, and how can I help?
Where are we going?
Larry, you unmuted. Did you want to say something?
I'm still thinking. I thought maybe you or John might say
Sure.
something.
Yep.
But I can say something quickly. That's a really good question. I've been with the organization for 4 months. It's not my first nonprofit experience. I've been a volunteer for over 30 years in San Francisco. The reason I say that is I've seen a lot of organizations. I've volunteered for a lot of nonprofits. So now I'm actually getting paid by one. And what I've seen is I've seen what works and what doesn't work. And what I've seen so far for the last 4 months is that SF Reserve works. No pun intended. And we do, I think we have a great model, but what's nice about piggybacking off a national model is fine tuning it to our area. And that gives us a capability to really zero in on the specifics of the needs, like why isn't the elevator working, and metaphorically speaking. So to specifically answer your question, for my limited knowledge or my knowledge so far with SF Reserve, I only see this thing getting huge. I think it's going to grow and grow and grow. And we need everyone to help us.
Thanks, Larry.
Okay.
John, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I wanted to say that what started in my mind as mostly a job placement program and helping people achieve economic independence to a greater extent has become much broader because of the pandemic. And now it's really, we're not just finding jobs for folks, but we're improving quality of life. We're providing connectivity between them and their family and their friends and the greater world, and overcoming the isolation that many of our seniors started experiencing anew and to a greater extent after COVID required them to isolate, to stay in place. So I see it as a much bigger thing than just getting someone a job. It's really improving the quality of life. And I don't see that changing. I think that's become incorporated into who we are and what we do. So that's what I see on the horizon.
Yeah, and I'll just build on that. Part of where we're going, an enormous part of where we're going was facilitated by where we came from. And what I mean by that is pre-pandemic, we had worked really hard as a team, and Larry's continued that in his having joined, to create a strong infrastructure and process so that we could do our work as best as possible. And that, I mean, from a process standpoint, we really didn't skip more than one beat when we went virtual. I think like most, we had to rethink how we communicated with each other in this new platform, work out what that new reality was. But the majority of the folks that we serve that are actually placed reservists are older adults. And so one of the ways that we're looking to move forward is to, as I mentioned, reach further into highly marginalized populations and really say, have an ask of people. Do you know trans-owned businesses? Do you know disability-owned businesses? Right before the shelter in place, I went to the San Francisco Disability Business Alliance inaugural breakfast. So those types of things. And speaking with Paul K. Langmore at Disability Institute to try and recruit the 18 plus crowd living with a disability, which will help with some of the potentially with the technology requirements that our partners have. So I want to make sure that we have enough time for everybody else. So I'll leave it there.
Truly, thank you. And I think you're going to play a very special role too as we emerge from this period of isolation and have to reconnect. I really see you all doing that. But John, thank you, because I know that social isolation is a huge issue to start out with. And so now being able to offer connectivity in the midst of isolation is a huge gift, especially for mental health issues. Yes. Let's move to our next guest, the Reverend Nina Pickerel. she is a dear friend of mine. And just to give you some context, as the San Francisco Interfaith Council began to recognize its role as a hub for promoting issues related to older adults, we started connecting with the Department at that time of Aging and Adult Services, now Disability and Aging Services. And this relationship was recognized by the Meta Fund. The Meta Fund has been very supportive of that relationship. Because we were only a staff of 2, we needed some capacity. And so we came to SF Reserve looking for that capacity. And we were very, very blessed that Reverend Nina Pickerel, the deacon to the Episcopal Diocese of California, and who was doing some amazing work in the Bayview, agreed to come on and help us. So the San Francisco Interfaith Council is not just talking the talk, but we're walking the walk, and we are committed, and we have a reservist. And at this time, I'd like to welcome Deacon Pickerel and ask Nina about your work, both pre-pandemic and in the midst of the pandemic, because I know you made this wonderful pivot, as Peter mentioned as well. I think you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Michael. And to everyone here, just a wealth of information. You said boots on the ground. I am a senior, if you haven't noticed, with the gray hair. I am a disabled veteran, and I have enjoyed my time as a deacon, cathedral deacon at Grace Cathedral for 20 years, retired recently. And my job at Grace Cathedral, or my passion, were seniors. So we started a senior program at Grace Cathedral where we served breakfast, had a guest speaker from Adult Protective Services or Social Security or DMV, ... Then we would worship together, and then we'd share lunch together, have a food pantry, and move on. So building relationships has always been huge for us as those of us who wish to be with folks during what I refer to as the good, the bad, and the ugly, which is captured in the pastoral care. And that would include funerals and weddings and contacting Social Security offices or going to the Veterans Administration to be an advocate for some of our seniors. So I retired a little over a year plus ago, and I was walking on the plaza of Grace Cathedral, and I received a call from Michael Pappas. And he offered this position. And he says, you know, you go ahead and think about it and ... And I immediately said, yes. So my initial position was to start a spiritual toolbox. And that was to be given out to different agencies, senior living places, as to what spiritual tools were needed by our seniors, our disabled seniors. And with the pandemic, it took a drastic turn. So what we've done, and I always say we, there's no I in the work that we do together. So we at Bayview Mission, we're meeting twice a month with a senior component, and where seniors were able to come to get food and whatever other items they may need. So the senior bags were tailored. The pandemic hit, and we had to go from 30 to 6 volunteers. And instead of twice a month, we started opening every Monday. And so those Mondays, we take care of our initial neighbors who are seniors, who are disabled seniors. And what we've come to the conclusion, of course, which is very well known, is to empower our seniors, and especially our disabled seniors. Because now as a reservist, I get to be the feet on the ground and go to the initial food banks in our area. I'm able to go to SROs. I'm able to go to other places that I get to walk in and say, how many seniors do you have? And they go, oh, we have so-and-so. And I said, well, how many disabled seniors? And they look at me and kind of like scratch their head and go, what? Disabled seniors? And it's kind of like, oh, no, that's not going to work. So we've learned to be a little bold and approach our seniors and invite them to Bayview Mission, which is in Bayview Hunters Point of San Francisco, where we're able to offer our seniors, disabled seniors, groceries, free clothing, toiletries, anything that's needed for the household, nutrition bars, the Ensure, and all the needed items. And also to work with them in a relationship type setting, which takes time, which takes trust. And what we've done is open our doors. We have quite a bit of property here. So we're allowed to have, we let in 5 seniors at a time that are able to interact 6 feet apart with a mask after they've had their temperature taken and build this unique community. We have seniors in their 70s who are taking care of their parents here. We have seniors who are taking care of their disabled children. We have veterans who cannot find a ride to the VA hospital for a 6 o'clock surgery. And 6 volunteers are able to disperse and handle about 30 seniors, excuse me. So this all sounds all and very good, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. So having more feet on the ground and honoring, Peter's work and Larry and Jamie and Michael's and John. I mean, John took me on like, oh my gosh, what have I taken on? And he was very pastoral and helped me with my techie, because I am not a techie person. Personal person, fine. Techie, scratch. And I'm getting excited. So empowering our disabled seniors has been huge. And there's no pay. The golden word is volunteer. So we have one person, a disabled senior, that we take 5 bags of groceries to her home, outside her door. And she disperses those bags to seniors in her neighborhood. And that's what I call empowering. And that's the need of building relationships as a reservist here in Bayview Hunters Point. So please, Michael, when it gets close to 5 minutes, do this.
You're great. Do you have a question for our?
Yes, I have a question. I have many questions, but one question I have. I am an intern with the district attorney's office, and it has opened doors and doors and doors. So when you want to go to Adult Protective Services and you're an intern with the district attorney's office, you're in. I would like to know, is there a program that our reservists could take this course through the district attorney's office?
You'd like to know if we'd be willing to offer that? Of course. Yes.
It's huge. It's huge.
Yes, absolutely. And yes, and the way that we do that is we have another team member, Alan Kaufman, who is our data manager. And so we can just at the tip of our fingertips do outreach to everyone who's come through our doors, who's still a job seeker, as well as existing reservists, and that is over 100 folks, about 150-ish folks. So yes, we will definitely would love to do some kind of an email blast, so you can send me a blurb, Nina, or we can chat, whatever works for you. Yeah.
Thank you.
I feel great that on this program we're incubating ideas like this. Amen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, let's move to our last of our 3 community panelists, but not least, Casey Rios Asbury, the Executive Director of Demonstration Gardens.
Yes, and Casey provided me with a few slides, and I am going to make that happen.
And I just want to let her know we're okay time-wise.
Okay, thank you.
Oh,
Everybody
Wonderful.
take a deep breath.
Oh, that's a good idea. We could just do that, just breathing.
Okay.
Another thing I learned is to give yourself a big bear hug
Mhm.
and turn a little bit and expand with it.
Yeah.
So thank you, San Francisco Interfaith Council, Michael, and your amazing team for continuing to host these really important discussions in our time. I also want to thank very much Jamie, John, and Larry for all of your deep support for our work. We're very grateful for you. And also to shout out to my beloved colleague at SDA, Betty Traynor, who knew that we were going to be connected this way through our talk this morning. The Demonstration Gardens is an environmental literacy and advocacy organization. We're established in the Tenderloin of San Francisco in 2009, and we are connected with this interfaith community through our friends at the Faithful Fools, through the First United Universalist Church, and through the San Francisco Night Ministry. We are accompanied by them, and we accompany them, and we're grateful for all of the really wonderful images of accompaniment in our community. I think it makes it feel like a small town, even in a big city. Green livelihood training, especially for marginalized peoples, is an important aspect of environmental justice and a linchpin of our work. The partnership between Demonstration Gardens and Reserve has expanded our reach because Reserve manages administration, recruiting, and payroll, so we can focus resources on teaching and learning using expressive arts like gardening and puppetry and music, design and community-led development to empower the residents of our neighborhoods. Without our talented, diverse, and passionate seniors enabled by Reserve, the Demonstration Gardens wouldn't even exist in the same way, let alone be expanding in this time of what is largely kind of a general contraction. Next slide, please. Here you see an intergenerational cohort that includes reservists Dan Bozier, Deborah Brooks, and also Rodney Wright, who is a CSEP member. Both Dan and Deborah came through CSEP, so I want to testify to the effectiveness of this scaffolding, and I want to hope that we can all work toward building more scaffolding for these workforce programs together. We have learned through our work that not only does everyone need nature, but people in trauma need nature most and respond to nature the most. In partnership with Reserve, we are seeing how green livelihood training can be the secret sauce that realizes the promise of authentic green infrastructure, growing to replace the old antiquated forms that don't serve us very well, and invigorating our plazas, parks, and neighborhoods. Resilience, I think, is the watchword for this time. And I want to ask our friends at Reserve the question about, I want to go into this idea of scaffolding and how can we, with our interfaith community, work together to expand the scaffolding that you've built. How can we imagine a deeper and more meaningful outreach that's building on this inclusive, deliberately inclusive environment that you've initiated?
Thanks for that question, Casey. And Nina and Peter, I didn't thank you for your question, so I want to do that right now. I did write down scaffolding when you said that, because I love that. And that's been one of the ways, that a very primary way, that Community Living Campaign has been able to exist and grow. And we've grown significantly in the past few years. And literally just doing this is building the scaffolding, because, you know, the multiplier effect is when people, we hope that people, research says that people talk about bad experiences 10 times more than they talk about good ones. But given this particular community and the needs, and are making an ask for your help, I have a sense that this will be talked about at least 10 times over and over. So continuing from this, for individuals, for you all to reach out to us for any questions that you might have with regard to Reserve, any resources that we may have. John mentioned the Work Matters program, and that started the Work Matters collaboration with Positive Resource Center, our latest partner in that collaboration, Jobs Now, and Felton CSEP. And that we have started to grow that and expand that even more. And one of the ways that we've done that is not only in terms of referring potential job seekers or passing on jobs, but to, as I mentioned, how are we going to get into other, marginalized pockets, but also around the technology and training. As John said, Reserve isn't a training, we're not founded on a training program. But we are looking to leverage, in particular, any online training that can happen. And we've been evaluating a program that is part of Accenture, which is a large consulting firm, management consulting firm, part of a program that they developed under their corporate social responsibility, to see what appropriate modules on soft skills, on interviewing online, all those kinds of topics that we might offer to our folks. We're also really pushing into the intergenerational efforts to grow and scaffold. And I've spoken to an organization called Project Level, and they work with teenagers and provide them with technology to make videos, to produce events, and they're highly creative. They've actually been working one-on-one for the past 2 years with adults around using technology, and would be willing, when it's appropriate, if older adults are comfortable, would be willing to take a COVID test, get all the PPE, and take all the proper precautions and go into people's homes. So that may never happen during COVID, but just that we're finding partners and collaborators who are willing to do that. It's, as John said earlier, it's I think the whole program has just become so much more rich. And it's become rich in part because, for instance, the Work Matters collaboration, and I'm also on the CASE disability subgroup, Coalition for Aging Senior, Empowering Seniors. I'm terrible with acronyms, but I think that's pretty close. One of the things that we've really focused on more is supporting each other as those who are in service, and recognizing that what we're doing is the best work that we can do, that it is good enough, that we won't be able to reach everybody, as sad and devastating as that is, but that we can keep enriching and scaffolding and seeping, like culturally seeping into all the cracks, to pull people out. And that's what Community Living Campaign is really good at. And I think SDA and all of you is not only showing up for people, but just saying, come on, I'm going to tug you a little bit so you come on out. And that's really been bolstered by the existing relationships we have, and looking forward to doing that with as many people on this call as possible. So
I just would like to emphasize something too. We are looking for older adults within communities of faith, but we're also looking for job opportunities. And I believe there's no such thing as a coincidence. Literally shortly after I was introduced to this program, I happened to go to Bureau and Son, the master silversmiths in San Francisco. And they said to me, Michael, do you know any folk that are perhaps wanting to re-enter the workplace part-time, because we need an office manager, but we don't want somebody full-time. And it was like kismet, if you will. And I went back to the Reserve program, a community living campaign, and we were able to make a placement. And so in addition to, having this unique workforce within congregations, I think that there are also some job opportunities that perhaps some of the congregants have, and especially in this time of COVID, where they're looking for perhaps part-time workers. And so I would encourage as well that our listeners, and especially our faith leaders, consider that as they do outreach within their congregations. And I know that we've gone over time a little bit. I want to say a very special thank you both to our presenters as well as to our community panelists. Your presentations were all very illuminating and informative, and I'm hoping that folks listening caught on to certain things and will respond. We will be sending this recording link out with the slide deck and helpful resource links. We hope that you take advantage of them. As we're saying thank yous, I also want to say a thank you again to Cynthia Zambucas, our SFIC Program Administrative Associate, and to the COVID Command Center's Joint Information Center virtual outreach team. Today we had Alyssa Carawala, who's our producer, Sharon Walton, lead, and Nick Marino. And we thank Trey Russell Allen, who's the overall director of this program. Without y'all, we couldn't do it. We ask you to please join us next week when we're going to hear from some leading experts at the San Francisco Department of Public Health on developments and issues relating to the long hoped for COVID-19 vaccine. So that should be very, very interesting. And we encourage you all to come and meet with us back next week at this same time. That concludes this morning's briefing. Again, thank you for joining us.
thank you
everyone.
for the opportunity and your participation.
Thank you.
Be well.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.